But first, I saw one of the saddest press conferences ever today. The Coalition's press conference to announce their defence policy at last. But it wasn't bad because of what Opposition Leader Peter Dutton said, or as Defence spokesman Andrew Hastie allowed at last to speak. What depressed me were some of the questions, deeply, deeply unserious. And part of this wider cultural rot of a fracturing society that's looking at everything through identity politics. Now, the opposition today actually announced something big. I mean, another $21 billion over 5 years for our defence. It's still not enough, but it is a lot. A promise to lift defence spending as a share of our economy to 2.5% in 5 years and 3% in 10. It's still way more than Labor. And it's good because even Labor Defence Minister Richard Marles says we do face the most dangerous strategic circumstances since World War II. I mean, you've got China openly threatening war against Taiwan. You've got China even sending 3 warships to circle Australia, firing weapons to intimidate us. And as Hastie pointed out, with Trump, gone now are the days when we could rely on American help. Yet with all these threats, the Albanese government has actually weakened our military, stripped it of weapons, even of rounds for live-fire training for our soldiers.
Under this Labor government. In fact, under Labor, we've seen $80 billion worth of cuts, delays and reprioritisations to the Defence Force, and we are now weaker as a result. They've cut our infantry fighting vehicle program, they've cut our 2 supply ships, they've cut the 4th Squadron of F-35s. They are busy cutting and weakening this country. And that's why today's announcement is so important. We're going to increase our defence spend to 2.5% of GDP within 5 years, and out to 10 years it'll be at 3%. Labor has revised its own figure of 2.4% down to 2.3% in 10 years. They are making our country weaker.
Okay, so we face a very serious danger and we get a serious response from the Liberals. Worth discussing, right? But a whole chunk of today's press conference got diverted because of a personal opinion that Andrew Hastie expressed to me 7 years ago when he was a backbencher. Something he said was based on his experience as a captain in our elite SAS, fighting in Afghanistan under sometimes extreme conditions.
I think roles in the ADF should be open to women. I've worked with a lot of women, great signallers, great intelligence operators, a whole range of roles. They perform very well. My personal view, since you've asked me, is that close combat roles are incredibly exacting. That's why we have rigorous selection courses. And my personal view is that the fighting DNA of a close combat unit is best preserved when it's exclusively male. Now, that's not a popular view.
No, it wasn't a popular view with some activists and gender warriors and ABC journalists and the like. And 7 years later, Defence Minister Richard Marles says, with views like that, Andrew Hastie can't be a Defence Minister.
Now, I think that's untenable for an alternative Defence Minister.
That's from Richard Marles, who's never served in war, even in peace. In fact, if anyone is disqualified from being a Defence Minister, that is Richard Marles, who has weakened our military exactly when we badly need it to be stronger. Now today, Hastie said again and again, look, that was a personal opinion back then. There is not going to be any change to the Coalition's policy or the Army's policy to let women serve anywhere. But journalists took the Labor cue and tried Hastie for thought crimes. He was badgered on the ABC this morning, again at his press conference later, and check out the outrage when he added the obvious rule that if you wanted to be in combat, whatever race or gender you were, you had to meet the physical standards for that role.
Do you think women should serve in combat roles in the ADF?
Yeah, the Coalition policy is that all combat roles are open to women. It's been our long-standing position, so we need to be able to win every fight that we go into, and that's why we'll uphold high standards. Thank you.
Are you saying that women have lower standards? Is that what you're saying?
Hardly. It's hardly what I'm saying. I'm saying we have one standard.
Sounds like from that answer that you still think women aren't strong enough. Is that right? That women aren't strong enough to deal with that sort of combat you described?
Again,
Is that what you're saying?
No, I didn't say that at all.
Sorry, do you not believe in your own policy then? If that's your personal belief, or the coalition policy is something different?
I'm standing right here saying there's one policy. I mean, this is kind of student politics stuff.
Honestly, I actually think most Australians watching that from home would think, what? What did Hastie say that's so bad? All he's saying now is that physical standards must be maintained. And anyone saying, well, that's wrong, maybe they shouldn't be so tough for women, is actually agreeing that women do tend to be weaker, and in battle, that will get them killed, and maybe some of their comrades with them. And then there were other snarky, desperately unserious questions, smirk-on-face questions about the opposition's defence policy like this.
Are you doing this in response to Donald Trump suggesting that countries like Australia should increase their GDP, the share of GDP defence spend to 3%?
I mean, you'll remember that Kim Beazley called for 3% of GDP to be spent on defence.
But Donald Trump has done that recently within the last 12 months.
This election is between Anthony Albanese and I.
And this is a Trump policy to defend Australia? I mean, seriously. And of course, there were the questions that repeated the Labor line as put out by Treasurer Jim Chalmers earlier.
They're not saying where the money is coming from. They're not coming clean on their cuts.
3% is a lot of money over the decade. How will you fund that?
Now, I guess, that would be normally a reasonable question, and Dutton responded that it would come from things like scrapping that small tax cut that Labor promised, plus savings he claimed he'd find once he was in government, but wouldn't tell us now. But I've got to ask where Jim Chalmers gets off, demanding to know, where's the money coming from? When Chalmers is the guy that's just run up a $27 billion deficit this year and will next year slap another $42 billion on the credit card, he doesn't care where the money's coming from, if he's spending it. And that's for those journalists demanding, where's the money coming from, Mr. Dutton? Do they actually care that Labor, meanwhile, is not bothered at all to make things add up, is just getting us deeper in debt? Double standards here. Now, of course, there are legitimate questions, serious questions, to ask Hastie and Dutton about this policy today. And some journalists at the press conference did ask them, like, why didn't they say where all these extra defence billions are going to be spent? On what programs especially? And why wait so late to reveal a policy so important? But playing this gender politics instead? Treating biological reality as an insult to women? All of us need to get serious again now, when this country is at the brink of a possible war.